My name is Ava Branch. I was 20 years old when I learned that breaking down and being broken are two very different things. The first panic attack didn't arrive like a storm. It crept in slowly, like static in the back of my skull. A noise I tried to tune out until it swallowed the whole frequency. I was in my dorm room at the time, junior year, second semester. It was 2:11 a.m. The overhead bulb had burned out, so the room glowed faint blue from my laptop screen, where an unfinished psych midterm essay blinked in silence. My hands were shaking. My vision was narrowing. My chest felt like someone had cinched it with wire, and I truly believed I was going to die. I didn't call 911. I didn't go to the RA. I called my brother, Tyler Branch, 7 years older, the polished one, the firstborn, the one who got awards, weddings, real estate listings, the one whose name looked good on embossed invitations and donor plaques, the one who always told me, "Come on, Ava, you're stronger than this." When he picked up, I could barely speak. My words were fractured, gasping, a whimper between sobs. I was trying to say, "I need help." He didn't panic. He didn't ask where I was. He laughed. "Ava, Jesus, you're not dying. You're just freaking out because you can't handle pressure." I remember those exact words. He said it like a punchline, like he was already telling the story to someone else. "Drink water. Close your eyes. You're fine." Click. That was the end of the call. By morning, my parents had heard. By that weekend, my aunts had too. At Thanksgiving, my cousin Ashley said, "We heard you had a little scare?" And my mother said, "She just had some anxiety." And Tyler said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Yeah, Ava's got the emotional range of a wet napkin." They laughed. I didn't, because I was still in outpatient care, still on SSRIs, still avoiding classrooms because I couldn't sit through a lecture without the floor feeling like it might open under my chair. But Tyler turned it into a family fable. Ava had a meltdown. Ava can't handle midterms. Ava's mentally weak. He called it a rough patch. But what he meant was defective. He took my most vulnerable chapter and made it a character flaw. I stopped attending holidays. Stopped opening the family group chat, stopped trying to defend myself against people who had already rewritten me. He never apologized, because to him there was nothing to apologize for. He thought he was toughening me up. He told people I was too in my head, that I needed thicker skin, that therapy was just a coping crutch. And because he was charming and clean-cut and loud, everyone nodded like he must be right. I never raised my voice. I raised my standards. I switched majors, graduated in silence, took an entry-level admin job at a trauma clinic and worked nights while finishing grad school. No one in my family knew, because they'd stopped asking, and I stopped explaining. Every time I remembered that night, the call, the laugh, the echo of, "You're just being dramatic," I used it. Fuel. Not for revenge, for design. Because I didn't want to make Tyler feel small. I wanted to make him irrelevant. But that was before he relapsed, before the intake forms landed in my clinic's database, before I saw his name again, this time listed under emergency self-admitted, substance-related. And just like that, the punchline came home. It didn't take long for the narrative to settle. I was no longer Ava, the ambitious psych student with research internships and a future in cognitive behavioral work. I was Ava, the girl who cried during a midterm. Ava, the fragile one. Ava, the anxious little sister who had a moment. My breakdown became shorthand for everything I'd never be invited to do again. Cousins' bridal parties, too much stimulation, corporate meet and greets. You know how Ava is with crowds? Family ski trips? Long travel days might trigger something. Trigger. That word became a joke in our group thread. Tyler would say, "We can't bring peanut brittle." Ava might get triggered. The worst part wasn't the mockery, it was the performance of support they layered on top. At Christmas, I got a set of meditation cards from my aunt, wrapped in glitter ribbon, handed to me with the phrase, "We all want you to feel centered, sweetie," like my nervous system was a personality flaw. At Easter, Tyler leaned across the table and said, "It's good to see you eating." I know stress used to mess with your appetite. I looked up from my plate and blinked at him. He smiled like he was being kind. But the sentence was a weapon. Because he wasn't trying to check in, he was branding me in front of our parents, our cousins, himself. Every word out of his mouth was part of a larger campaign, one where I was broken and he was benevolent, where he got to be the older brother who dealt with the sister who needed a little extra grace. It worked. Even my mother started echoing him. "You know your brother. He's just teasing." That's his way of showing love. Their love had rules, and I didn't meet them. I stayed quiet because I thought silence meant recovery, but the truth is, silence just makes you easier to edit. By the time I was 25, Tyler had told the story of my meltdown so many times it became family canon. They referenced it at barbecues, used it to explain why I wasn't dating, why I worked low-pressure jobs, why I stopped visiting. No one mentioned the fact that I was finishing my master's in clinical mental health counseling while working 2 jobs. No one knew I was already laying groundwork to open a clinic. Because the narrative didn't allow room for progress. It needed me frozen, needy, fragile, predictable. And then one day, I stopped playing along. I deleted the group thread. I blocked Tyler's number. I built a network of my own. Licensed professionals, policy experts, private investors who didn't care about my family tree, only my 10-year plan. I graduated, passed my licensure, went quiet on social media, opened my first co-owned outpatient center by 30, and then another. And then I was approached by a venture fund to help rehabilitate failing clinics in high-need counties. They asked if I'd be interested in buying in. I said yes, without asking where. It wasn't until 6 months later, while reviewing backlogged financial reports, that I saw the intake roster from Brentwood Recovery Center, and there it was. Tyler Branch, client ID number 14092-BR. No fanfare, no smirk, just a man who had checked himself in under a new insurance provider after a second DUI, citing emotional fatigue, dependency symptoms, and work-induced panic. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I was angry, because I wasn't surprised. Breakdown wasn't weakness. Breakdown was data. And I had all the records now. No one noticed when I stopped showing up to things. That was the point. I didn't storm out of the family. I didn't write a manifesto. I just became untraceable, professionally busy, geographically inconvenient, probably still going through something. What I was going through was a transformation. I studied trauma while working 2 receptionist jobs, one at a counseling center, the other at a dental clinic. At night, I transcribed intake notes and highlighted ethical lapses in administrative case files for practice. On weekends, I watched lectures on emotional regulation while eating dollar ramen. And every time Tyler posted a photo from another rooftop party, watch on wrist, grin in place, I made another bullet point in my internal file labeled, "People who don't look like they're falling apart can still be wrought." I earned my master's without family fanfare, no graduation dinner, no framed diploma photo on my parents' wall. But I didn't want applause. I wanted access. I got licensed, passed every certification with margin to spare, took on clients others didn't want, those with dual diagnoses, domestic violence records, or 3 failed rehabs behind them. I never told them about me, but I listened closely because their stories were mine in reverse. Rejection, dismissal, the ache of being seen only when broken. By 29, I co-managed an outpatient program. By 30, I owned a stake in 2. And by 31, I was approached by a private behavioral health group looking to salvage a series of underperforming recovery centers across the state. They weren't glamorous clinics, no ocean views, no spa menus, just concrete floors, locked med cabinets, and paperwork 3 decades out of date. But the opportunity wasn't aesthetic. It was architectural. They let me design the intake system. They let me restructure staff training. They let me choose which centers got reinvested in and which were sold. I built new therapy tracks from scratch, created internal review boards with teeth, rewrote entire chains of command with a focus on patient dignity and clinician accountability. And I bought in, anonymously at first, under an LLC so clean it didn't even include my initials. Then one Friday afternoon, while reviewing audit files from Brentwood Recovery, I saw the intake anomaly, an unusual billing code, multiple late session logs, client ID number 14092-BR, Tyler Branch, different address, new insurance, but the same birth date, same photo ID structure, same exact smirk in the file photo. He had checked himself in 6 weeks earlier, quietly, without telling the family. The diagnosis, panic episodes, alcohol dependency, unresolved grief from marital strain. The recommendation, 6-week intensive outpatient therapy. The oversight, he didn't know who owned the building. He didn't know that every therapist on site reported indirectly to me, that every compliance infraction rolled to my desk, that every violation of our policy, no matter how small, was logged, time-stamped, and forwarded to the same inbox where I'd once stared at my brother's words, "She's just being dramatic." He didn't know, but I did. And I waited. The intake form listed him as T. Raymond. Technically not a lie. His full name is Tyler Raymond Branch. But it was enough of a disguise to avoid family recognition, enough distance to seek help without leaving a digital trail that could trace back to his business clients or his curated social circle. The email he used was a Gmail alias. The emergency contact field was blank. The handwriting on the medical disclosure was steady, measured. I'd seen that script before, on birthday cards addressed to Aves, on contracts he used to review for our dad's real estate deals, on the post-it he once left on my dorm mini-fridge after my diagnosis, scrawled with, "Try yoga or something." The irony was clean. The same man who mocked my panic in public now listed palpitations, breath shortness, uncontrollable trembling as primary symptoms. The same man who told everyone I just wanted attention now ticked the box labeled frequent intrusive thoughts. There was no poetry in it, just pattern. I didn't intervene. Not then. Because the policy was simple. As long as the client attended sessions, abided by ethics, and showed progress, I stayed out of it. Even if he missed a Monday group. Even if his individual therapist marked him guarded, unwilling to disclose. Even when the counselor noted frequent digressions, tendency to reframe responsibility. I let the system work. I let the program do what it was designed to do, contain chaos. But he didn't know how to stay contained. The 3rd week in, he cornered one of the junior staff, asked if she believed all the trauma garbage they peddled here, laughed when she reminded him of boundaries. The next day, he no-showed a session, and the day after that, he demanded to meet with the program director to rework his schedule because he had real job obligations and couldn't sit around crying in a circle every other morning. That's when the report hit my inbox. He had violated our patient code of conduct. Clause 4, abuse or belittlement of staff or peer participants, verbal or nonverbal, may result in immediate reassessment for eligibility. It required a case review. I didn't hand it off. I scheduled it personally. Tyler didn't see the red flag. The meeting invite came from our generic admin account, time, date, and facility owner representative as the moderator. He showed up 10 minutes late. No notes, no questions, just a confident gait and an overpriced sports jacket that made him look like a man who thought the rules applied to other people. He sat down, smoothed his collar, and said, "I assume this is a formality?" I walked in, clipboard in hand. His smile dropped before mine even had a chance to rise. He didn't say my name, just stared like he was trying to do the math backwards, figure out how many days he'd been walking through a structure I controlled. "Hi, Tyler," I said calmly. "Thanks for coming." He blinked once, then tried to recover. "Didn't realize you were involved in this place." "I am," I said, "quite a bit more than you think." I handed him the policy violation report, 3 pages, highlighted in yellow, signed at the bottom by the clinician he harassed and countersigned by me. He started. I raised one hand. "This isn't a conversation," I said. "This is documentation." His face hardened. "You're seriously doing this?" "No," I said. "You did this." He leaned forward. "This is personal." "Number this is professional." He laughed, but it was hollow, the echo of the man who once weaponized my anxiety now circling the drain of his own. "You can't just—" "I can," I said flatly, "and I will." He folded his arms. "This is overkill." I tapped the report again. "This is accountability." He opened his mouth, but I wasn't done. "You'll receive a transfer referral and full refund. Your file will remain confidential per law, but you are no longer welcome here." I stood, effective immediately. He didn't stand. He didn't move. He just sat there, small for once. And I let the silence hang. Because silence had always been his weapon, but now it was mine. I didn't plan it. I didn't need to. Tyler had always been predictable. He performed confidence like a showman, grin, gesture, eye contact, just sharp enough to simulate sincerity. But under pressure, under protocol, under watch, he unraveled. The intake therapist's notes were the first signal. Resistant to group sharing. Claims not all trauma deserves a soapbox. Redirected multiple times. Week 2. He began skipping mindfulness sessions, said they were a waste of bandwidth, referred to another patient as emotionally indulgent after she cried during grief processing. He wasn't there to heal. He was there to bypass healing, to collect the badge without enduring the work. But recovery has a language, and Tyler never learned it. I let him stack the infractions, quietly, professionally, every missed session, every sarcastic remark, every time he used the phrase emotional coddling like a curse. What he didn't realize was that Brentwood Recovery wasn't just one of my facilities. It was the only one where I kept a direct oversight chain. I designed the disciplinary pathways myself. 3 strikes. Verbal abuse of staff. Strike 1. Failure to attend key sessions. Strike 2. Dismissive mockery of another patient's trauma. Strike 3. He thought no one would document the 3rd, but we did. And I watched it in real time, his slow erosion masked as ego, the tantrum disguised as confidence, the unraveling of the man who once looked me in the eye and told me mental illness was a weakness, not a condition. What Tyler didn't understand is that trauma doesn't expire, and when you bury it beneath arrogance, it finds new ways to rot you. So I waited. Not because I needed revenge, because I needed the file to be complete. At the end of week 5, I sat down with my director and reviewed the logs. We watched the security footage of Tyler arguing with the front desk over his misaligned schedule, saw him gesture too sharply, saw the receptionist flinch. We watched him walk out of a support group 30 seconds after introductions began, saw him roll his eyes at the term personal boundaries. We pulled the policy, matched the timestamps, and I drafted the separation documents myself. It was simple. 4 pages, calm tone, legal clarity, printed on thick linen stock. The final page had 1 blank line. Signature, Facility Director. I signed it, not with flourish, with precision, because this wasn't about vengeance, it was about structure. The same structure he mocked me for needing, and now it was the structure that was removing him, not out of spite, out of policy. The conference room was deliberately plain, no branding, no article, just neutral walls, a circular table, and 1 chair placed slightly apart, the patient seat. I designed it that way. Not to punish, to center. When you sit in it, you're in the middle of your own accountability. Tyler sat there now. He didn't look like the man who used to dominate dinner tables or hijack family holidays with stories about my meltdown. He looked tired, sallow, still in his business casual uniform, but it didn't sit on him the same way anymore. I entered with the folder under my arm. He straightened, trying to reclaim posture. He didn't speak first, an uncharacteristic restraint. I set the folder down and sat across from him. Clipboard, pen, policy packet. No smile, no emotion. Just structure. "Let's begin," I said. He blinked, waiting for softness. He didn't get it. "This is a policy violation review under subsection 4A of Brentwood's Conduct Code. You were advised of this in writing and again verbally by your attending clinician." He shifted. "This is excessive." "No," I said. "It's documented." I slid the packet across the table. Page 1, attendance failures. Page 2, patient interaction complaint. Page 3, staff incident log. He didn't touch it. "You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted. "You signed the clause on intake, and you chose not to comply." "This isn't about compliance," he snapped. "This is about you finally getting to act superior." I tilted my head. This is about a man who spent most of his adult life ridiculing mental illness until it landed in his own lap. And now that it has, he's allergic to the structure required to confront it. Silence. He looked around the room like someone expecting a jury. There wasn't one. Just me. His last fallback was the tone. Familiar, paternal, performative. "Ava, come on, we're family." I leaned forward slightly. "And when I called you, crying on the floor of a dorm bathroom, what were we then?" His eyes narrowed, the way they used to when he was about to punch down. "You're still holding on to that?" "No," I said flatly. I catalogued it. I slid the final page of the packet in front of him. Termination of services, a clean severance, a referral to another clinic outside our network, a line that ended with discharged due to breach of protocol and sustained conduct violations. He stared at it like it might rewrite itself. "I needed help," he muttered, as if saying it smaller made it more profound. I nodded. "And help is structured, help is earned, help has rules. You don't get to abuse the system because it doesn't flatter your narrative." He stood up abruptly. The chair legs squeaked against the vinyl floor. "I thought you, of all people, would understand." I stood too, calm, even. "I do. That's why I built the structure that's removing you." He looked like he wanted to yell, but couldn't find the volume. So I said it for him. Calmly. Finally. You once told everyone I was too mentally weak to function. I tapped the folder. And now I'm the one signing your discharge. I flipped to the final page, where the policy language was bolded. Non-compliant conduct reflecting behavioral instability inconsistent with continued outpatient treatment. I looked him in the eye. Per intake clause, your behavior meets the exact criteria you once said disqualified me. He froze, just long enough for the weight of it to settle. No dramatics, no breakdown, just the exact words he once threw into a crowded room, handed back, legally formatted, professionally delivered with full authority. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look away. I let the sentence end itself, and when he turned to leave, I said one more thing, not bitter, just clear. There's no weakness in breaking, there's only weakness in mocking someone who rebuilds. He didn't reply. He walked out, and I went back to work. The door clicked shut behind him with a soft finality. No slamming, no yelling, just that muted thud of someone who used to own the room, now exiting it under someone else's rules. I didn't follow. I didn't watch him leave the building. I didn't hover by the window to see if he looked back. I returned to my office, placed the signed discharge papers in the proper file tray, and closed the folder marked 14,092-BR. It was done. Tyler wouldn't be back, not to Brentwood, and not to any facility under my network's umbrella. The transfer had already been arranged. A new intake contact, a new city, a clinic that didn't trace back to me. I gave him the courtesy of care, just not the illusion of consequence-free access. 3 days later, he sent an email. No subject line, just a few clipped sentences. Guess you got what you wanted. You finally got to be in charge. Hope it was worth it. I didn't reply, because I don't write essays to ghosts. I printed it, stapled it to the back of his file, logged it under post-discharge contact, non-compliant tone. Then I went back to my schedule, 16 patients, 2 staff meetings, 1 emergency intake call from a woman who sounded like I did at 20, barely breathing into the receiver. That's the thing Tyler never understood. He thought the world was made of strong and weak, winners and liabilities. He didn't understand that healing isn't hierarchical. It's granular, it's quiet, it's clawing yourself out of a place no one knew you fell into and becoming someone they don't recognize. The week after his discharge, my assistant asked if I wanted to update my bio for the clinic's site. She said people were starting to ask who ran the place, especially after a recent press mention in a behavioral health journal. I said yes. We added 1 line. Founder, former patient, licensed clinician, strategic advocate. It didn't say sister. It didn't need to, because this wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about creating something no one could take from me again. Not dignity, not voice, not authority. It was about using the words that once buried me to build a door only I could lock. And when Tyler finds himself sitting across from another therapist in another city, forced to tell the story of what happened at Brentwood, he'll have to say it. Out loud. That his sister discharged him. For being non-compliant. For being disrespectful. For being the exact thing he once claimed I was. Mentally weak. And if he flinches when he says it, good. Because now he knows. Some of us don't get better to be forgiven. We get better to own the building.